Здравствуйте, товарищи. Welcome back to Russian Through Propaganda. We're on day 63, and today we're reviewing the genitive plural a bit since it's a rather tricky set of case endings. And then we'll practice some other things, review how to express non-existence in Russian and so forth. Okay, so let's start with a quick recap of the genitive plural. Right, here are the endings that we see, right? So ov is going to be the basic ending for hard masculine. So film becomes filmov. We have this yev ending, which is actually somewhat unusual. It's really just for soft masculines ending in ikratkaye, so muziev, for example. Then we have the zero ending, right? For hard feminines and hard neuters especially. Kniga, knig, okno, oken. Remember that soft feminines would also tend to take the a zero ending. Anyway, now what about special soft nouns, right? So special softs, they take e. Now keep in mind that that's actually just a zero ending, as we discussed yesterday. It's just maybe the spelling is a bit weird looking, but it's entirely consistent with just getting rid of the final vowel sound. Then it's just a question of how we spell that in Russian. Anyway, leksia becomes leksi. Zdanya becomes zdani. Note that that ending is only one syllable, of course, right? Leksi, zdani, right? The ending is one syllable. Both of those words are only two syllables. Okay, and finally, yay, right? So we have to keep a lookout for when we use the yay ending. That's going to include soft nouns, soft neuters. Sorry, moria, morie, right? So most soft nouns. There are a couple of exceptions. Then here's a very useful one: any noun ending in a soft sign, right? There's a lot of those, right? Soft masculines and also feminine e nouns, right? So viesh becomes vieshey. Quite often that yay ending is going to be stressed, by the way, as we see here, especially if the word's only one syllable. And finally, ключ, that's the group of masculines ending in a hushing consonant, like zh, ch, sh, sh, right? Ключ becomes ключей. Let's look at a poster. От моделей ученических до кораблей космических. So from models, от моделей, right? Модель, от моделей ученических, meaning something having to do with an ученик, which is like a school kid, a pupil. До кораблей космических, right? To a корабль is a boat. I think we may have seen that. Корабль, кораблей. Okay, so both of those words, модель and корабль, they end in a soft sign. So you see here we're getting yay in the genitive plural. So this is obviously a poster encouraging young kids to dream about getting involved in the Soviet space program. All right. Let's see. So let's do a few of these. Let's practice here by way of review, right? The nominative plural and the genitive plural. So a lot to juggle here. Let's start with computer, right, which is a hard masculine. So let's say это мои blank. These are my computers. That would call for the nominative plural, of course. And then у меня много blank. I have a lot of computers, right? That'll call for the genitive plural. Okay, это мои компьютеры. У меня много компьютеров. Number 2, словарь, right? Soft masculine. This also happens to be an in-stressed noun, right? So whenever we add an ending, it's going to be stressed. Это мои словари. У меня много словарей, right? Yay, because of the soft sign. 3, тетрадь, so a notebook. Это мои тетради, right? This is a feminine e noun, by the way. Это мои тетради, nominative plural. Now genitive. У меня много тетрадей, тетрадей. 4, этаж. Это мои этажи. These are my floors of a building. This is kind of a dumb example. I mean, anyway, sometimes it's hard to think of these because I want to get every different word types in the mix here. Okay, maybe let's pretend this is a building speaking, right? And he's saying, I have a lot of stories, a lot of floors. Это мои этажи. And now genitive plural. У меня много этажей. All right, 5. These are my photos. I've got a lot of photos. Это мои фотографии. У меня много фотографий. Now, again, note the pronunciation on those endings. The nominative plural the ending is ee, two vowels, therefore two syllables. So if we're saying that very clearly, we say fotografii, fotografii, versus genitive plural is going to be e, right? И краткая, only one vowel, and therefore only one syllable in the ending. У меня много фотографий. 6. Идея. Это мои идеи, right? These are my ideas. У меня много идей, right? That's actually zero ending, just watch the spelling. 7. Поле, a field. Это мои поля, right? There's that shifting stress in the neuter plural. У меня много полей, right? I have a lot of fields. 8. Бутылка. Это мои бутылки. У меня много бутылок. All right. 9. Right, zero ending for, by the way, butylok, and then we're supplying the mobile vowel to break up the L-Ka cluster. Butylok. 9. Ручка. These are my pens. Это мои ручки. And then I have many pens. У меня много ручек. Okay, note the yeah there. We're writing that as our mobile vowel because we can't have the unstressed ul after ch, right? 5-letter spelling rule. 10. Лекарства, medicine. These are my medicines. Это мои лекарства. Right, and then for the neuter plural, у меня много лекарств. And as we mentioned, although we might certainly expect that final cluster to be broken up, it's not in Russian, and no one can really say why, it just isn't. 11. Музей. These are my museums. Это мои музеи. Again, two syllable, well, in total 3 syllables. Музеи for the plural. У меня много музеев. Right, so that's a soft masculine ending in и краткое. Музеев. 12. Знакомый. Okay, watch out. This is actually an adjective. Right, so these are my acquaintances. Это мои знакомые, right, знакомые. У меня много знакомых, right? So ich, as we know, is the genitive plural ending for hard adjectives, and that's what we get here. Remember, once an adjective, always an adjective. Знакомый is an adjective, so even though it can kind of act as a noun, it cannot take noun endings. 13. Товарищ. Это мои товарищи. These are my comrades, my buddies. У меня много товарищей, because of the hushing consonant. 14. Новость. It's a feminine e noun. Это мои новости. Right, this is my news. У меня много новостей. Right, I have a lot of news, a lot of pieces of news, you might say, right there in the plural. And there, that stress shift is somewhat unexpected. But again, we see that yay is quite often stressed. You might not necessarily expect that for certain in a 2-syllable word, but anyway, that is the stress here. Новостей. Okay, so let's talk a bit about words used in the plural only. We talked about this a little bit, right, with items of clothing. Let's start out first with words that are, I guess, usually heard in the plural because they come in pairs or whatever, but they could be used in the singular in theory. Okay, so let's just give the plurals and say I have blanks in the plural, and then let's say I don't have these things, and that would, of course, trigger the genitive plural, right? Because it's a non-existence statement. So more on that here in a moment. Okay, so носок means a sock. I have socks. У меня есть носки. I don't have socks. У меня нет носков. Сапог, a boot. У меня есть сапоги. I have boots. I don't have boots. У меня нет сапогов. That's an in-stress noun. Ботинок, so a shoe, right? That's something more boot-like than some type of dress shoe. У меня есть ботинки. У меня нет ботинков. Тапка, right? Slippers for wearing in the house. So let's say I have slippers. У меня есть тапки. У меня нет тапок. And now the diminutive form of that same word, тапочка, which is very commonly used. У меня есть тапочки. У меня нет тапочек. Okay, туфля, maybe a kind of dressier kind of shoe. У меня есть туфли. I have shoes. У меня нет Tufel. Okay, so there's a kind of a tricky one, right? That special, just ordinary soft feminine. We're dropping the vowel at the end. That would leave us with tufel, right? But because of the cluster there, we break that up and it becomes soft, tufel. Now there again, sometimes this happens where there's no obvious reason why that should be a yen instead of an or, right? There's nothing inherently soft about that F. So again, sometimes these genitive plural forms are a little bit unpredictable, and you just kind of have to learn some of them as you go. Okay, anyway, kроссовка is an athletic shoe. У меня есть кроссовки, у меня нет кроссовок, right? Feminine, zero ending, mobile vowel. Пельмень, right? That is a single пельмень, I guess. Пельмень. Right? Hopefully you have more than one, right? You have a plate full of them. У меня есть пельмени. Right? It's like Russian ravioli if you don't know what пельмени are. У меня нет пельменей. Right? I have no пельмени. They're in the genitive plural. All right? Ends in a soft sign, so we get yay in the genitive plural. Серьга, earring. У меня есть серьги. Right? I have earrings. Stress shifts back to backwards to the opposite syllable. У меня нет серёг. I don't have earrings. Okay, so there's an unpredictable form, right? The latent you're popping up. Now if we think about this a little bit, right? We see we have a soft R, right? So we know we're going to get a yeah as our mobile vowel, right? To keep the R soft. And you see the stress is jumping around there. So anyway, it's kind of at least plausible there that we're getting the yaw. Although again, we ultimately have no way of predicting that for certain. Okay, volus. Let's say I have hair. У меня есть волосы. And here in irregular genitive plural, у меня нет волос. And that's basically, I told you yesterday, that very archaic pattern in which the genitive plural was the same as the nominative singular. Okay, now let's look at some nouns that are never used in the singular, at least not in these meanings, right? And so these can be a bit tricky because you only see them in the plural usually, or ever. The plural endings sort of obscure the gender, right? And for some of these. Usually if you look these up in a Russian dictionary, they would tell you the gender, but sometimes even the gender is not necessarily pinned down. So, for example, a noun like brюки, right, that ends up taking a zero ending in the genitive plural, right? But, it's kind of hard to say. Do Russians regard that as a feminine or a neuter noun? And I'm actually going to look it up right now and see what happens. But the point is, so I just looked it up in this fairly reliable online dictionary, and it does not give gender, right? And this is actually a foreign borrowing from Dutch, apparently. Okay, so which does make it kind of an odd word to begin with, right? There's nothing really historically Russian about it. But again, it shows you that sometimes you can kind of be caught off guard, and you realize that even some of these common nouns that you may know very well, you may be stumped if you ask what gender are they. Okay, so anyway, here I've instead of telling you the gender, I've told you what form, how the genitive plural is formed here, and so let's just practice giving these. Okay, so штаны. Let's say I don't have pants, and so we need genitive plural. This is basically a masculine noun, hard masculine. Sorry, in some cases I am telling you the gender, and in other cases I'm just telling you what ending is required, like with брюки. Okay, so anyway, this will be у меня нет штанов. У меня нет штанов. Okay, I don't have any духи, I don't have perfume. У меня нет духов. That's a hard masculine. Очки. У меня нет очков. Hard masculine. Джинсы. Hard masculine. У меня нет джинсов. Шорты. Another hard masculine. У меня нет шортов. Брюки. Okay, this takes a zero ending. У меня нет брюк. Часы. Hard masculine. Now there we can sort of know that because we know the singular chas, meaning where we know that this word, in its singular form, which again has a different meaning, we can see clearly that it is actually hard masculine. So, у меня нет часов. That can mean I don't have a clock or I don't have a watch. Деньги. Okay, that's a hard feminine as we discussed. Деньга, I think, was the original form, which is never used anymore. У меня нет денег. Right, so zero ending, and there our mobile vowel is a yeah, clearly because we have a soft N. Денег. Ножницы, hard feminine. Okay, so we'll get zero ending here. У меня нет ножниц. Right, I have no scissors. Наушники, earphones, meaning literally things you put onto your ears, right? Науши. That's hard masculine. У меня нет наушников. Sливki, this is going to take a zero ending. And again, I'm going to not Google it. I'm putting it into gramata.ru, and I'm going to see what gender it gives me. Okay, again, it doesn't even list gender. Okay, so, ultimately it doesn't really matter, I suppose, right? As long as we know the forms. Why is that? I sort of didn't mention, why is it maybe not so important that even Russians may not really be clear what gender some of these nouns are? Well, keep in mind, if they're used in the plural only, then gender doesn't really matter, right? For example, adjectives, right, they're going to be the same for plural adjectives are going to be the same regardless of gender. So that's why, the only trick really with these is knowing the genitive plural. All the other forms, it's not going to be a problem, really. And so people, I guess, don't really even give much thought to what gender these nouns are quite often. Now, again, in some cases, it's obvious what gender they are, but, for people who know the language, but others, like bruki and slivki, maybe not really at all. Okay, anyway. У меня нет сливок. У меня нет сливок. Okay, she, means cabbage soup, plural only. У меня нет щей. Okay, and that's kind of a funny noun, but we might guess that the genitive plural would be in yay because the sh, right, that sh consonant. At any rate, we get shay. Okay, let's discuss quickly the difference between count and non-count nouns. This is pretty simple, really. Basically, a count noun is something, it's a noun that we can count. Right, like how many pencils do you have? How many computers do you have? And so forth, right? Anything you can count, we would call that a count noun. Other nouns, you can't really be counted. Things like liquids, right? So, for example, you can have a lot of books, but you can't have a lot of waters, unless you're talking about your fabulous selection of mineral waters in a restaurant or something, right? So for some of these, there are kind of some weird instances, especially with liquids. Like one example I could give is piva, right? Normally that would be a non-count noun, right? Do you have a lot of beer? Now, then the question is, can you say things like, hey, that restaurant has a lot of beers? A lot of Russians won't tolerate that. I think I said something like that with my mother-in-law once, and she said, no, you should say this or the other. One way to get around that is to say много сортов пива or something like this. A lot of kinds of beer, or some other way to put that, right? Although that is kind of a matter of preference. I definitely have heard that used in the plural in that sense. But anyway, I'm kind of getting off track here a little bit. Okay, so basically, some nouns can be counted, others can't. And that will affect certain expressions like, of quantity, right? I have a lot of water. У меня много воды, right? That's genitive singular because we can't count it. But a lot of books, that would be много книг, because genitive plural, because we can count books. Okay, so this isn't really, I guess, that big of a deal because it lines up with English and it kind of stands to reason. Okay, anyway, let's go on to review existence versus non-existence. So this is kind of a tricky topic, and it probably threw you for a loop back in book 1, but hopefully now you're cool with it. So to express existence, right? Something exists, there is a car, or I have a car, we have a car, right? It could also be possession. right? Есть машина, у меня есть машина, anything like that. We have subject expressions, right? We have a subject. In Russian, that means we have a noun in the nominative, and the verb forms will agree with that subject in the nominative. So let's look at this across the three tenses and the three genders. Есть стол, есть книга, есть окно. Okay, past tense, look how the verb's changing to agree. Был стол, была книга, было окно. Future tense, будет стол, будет книга, будет окно. Okay, so that's all pretty clear. That's kind of the easy part of the equation. Now look at non-existence. We get here this peculiar Russian idiom, right? To express non-existence, we use a subjectless construction with the genitive. Okay, let's review. What do we mean when we say subjectless? Whenever you hear that, you should think a couple of things. First of all, obviously, no subject. No subject. Okay, what does that mean in terms of Russian grammar? It means we have no noun in the nominative, right? Okay, then the second thing is, what about the verb, right? Since there's no subject, what forms will the verb be in? Well, the verb will be always neuter singular in form, right? Always neuter singular. It will never change in a given tense based on the gender of what we're talking about. Because remember, the thing we're talking about is not the subject. So the verb is not going to change to agree with a subject that doesn't exist, right? So anyway, these are obviously ultimately extremely simple expressions in Russian, very simple, very basic, but they can be a little hard to wrap your head around. Hopefully you're more comfortable with it now than you were in book one. Okay, so anyway, again, three tenses, three genders. Нет стола, нет книги, нет окна. Не было стола, не было книги, не было окна. Look at how the verb doesn't change there. And there in the past tense, you can see most clearly that these verbs are all actually neuter singular, right? The form of the verb is the same as it would be if we did have a neuter singular subject. Okay, finally, future. Не будет стола, не будет книги, не будет окна. There will not be these things. Okay, now what about non-existence in the plural, right? Well, it all lines up with what we've just said, right? Есть книги, были книги, будут книги. Okay, those are the existence expressions. We have a plural subject now. There are books, right? Books exist. There were books. There will be books, right? Now, non-existence, right? If it's a count noun, of course, and we use genitive plural, right? There are no books. Нет книг, не было книг, не будет книг. Now, keep in mind with all of these expressions, you could throw in an u to bring possession into the picture, right? У меня есть книги, у меня нет книг, and so forth with all of these expressions. Okay, now let's look at some more examples, right, in terms of count and non-count. Right, so again, if we take liquid, that would generally, for all practical purposes, be a non-count noun, right? The issue is quantity, not how much of it do you have, not how many of it do you have, right? Okay, so нет водки, right? Singular, of course, we can't count it, right? So there is no vodka. Не было водки, не будет водки, right? Okay, what about count? So now let's look at count nouns. Okay, those could be singular or plural, of course, right? So how do we say there is no book, singular? Well, of course, that would be нет книги, не было книги, не будет книги. But to make that plural, right, and we can count books, right? We can have a lot of them, we can have one of them or whatever. Here we're negating it and saying there are no books. Нет книг, не было книг, не будет книг. Okay, let's try a few of these in the singular and plural. And here we're practicing now genitive singular and genitive plural. So here's some review. Okay, I don't have a dictionary. That'll be у меня нет словаря. I don't have dictionaries, genitive plural. У меня нет словарей. Right, that's a soft masculine. Okay, газета, hard feminine. I don't have a newspaper. У меня нет газеты. I don't have newspapers. У меня нет газет. Идея, soft feminine. У меня нет идеи. Right, I don't have an idea. I don't have ideas. У меня нет идей. Четыре, тетрадь, special soft feminine. У меня нет тетради. Right, there's that telltale Genitive ending E, that's why we call these things E nouns. У меня нет тетради. I don't have notebooks, plural. У меня нет тетрадей. Тетрадей. 5. Ключ. У меня нет ключа. I don't have a key. I don't have keys. У меня нет ключей. 6. Вопрос. I don't have a question. У меня нет вопроса. У меня нет вопросов. 7. Окно. I don't have a window. У меня нет окна. I don't have windows. У меня нет окон. Right? Zero ending, neuter. 8. Билет. I don't have a ticket. У меня нет билета. I don't have tickets. Genitive plural. У меня нет билетов. 9. Рубашка, shirt. У меня нет рубашки. I don't have a shirt. I lost it gambling. Right? I don't have shirts. У меня нет рубашек. Rubashik. And there's, again, that 5-letter spelling rule issue where we're forced to use ye as our mobile vowel instead of o because of the 5-letter spelling rule. 10. Ручка. У меня нет ручки. У меня нет ручек. Same issue there with the 5-letter spelling rule. Ручек. 11. I don't have a book. У меня нет книги. I don't have books. У меня нет книг. Okay, now let's try out a few singular only and plural only nouns. So number 1, food, right? That's going to be singular only in Russian, meaning it's just only used in the singular, right? You have a lot of food, you have no food, but we don't say foods in Russian. У меня нет еды, right? Genitive singular, I have no food. Okay, and number 2, одежда, basically clothing. So we say clothes in English, but clothing, for example, we wouldn't use in the plural to say clothings, right? So the Russian одежда is like English clothing. So I don't have clothes, that'll be у меня нет одежды. 3, белье, laundry. This means literally white stuff, which can maybe help us explain why it's singular only in Russian. У меня нет белья. 4. I don't have sour cream. У меня нет сметаны. 5. Пиво. Okay, liquid, right? So it would normally be a non-count noun. У меня нет пива. У меня нет пива. 6. Деньги. Okay, so these are now plural only nouns in Russian. У меня нет денег. Okay, so of course if they're plural only, then in non-existence expressions we're going to use genitive plural, right? We don't have much choice. I don't have glasses. У меня нет очков. 8. Джинсы. У меня нет джинсов. 9. Часы. So again, that could mean hours, but here this plural only noun is going to mean clock or a watch. У меня нет часов. And finally, 10. Брюки. У меня нет брюк. Брюк. Okay, let's close today with a poster. This is one of the most famous posters in this book, probably. It's just kind of a notorious little poster. It's rather humorous and somewhat off color. And you just see this and sort of memes based on this. It's that type of thing that's just kind of everyone knows about it. And it just kind of tends to pop up now and then. And anyway, the little verse here is written by Mayakovsky, this famous Soviet poet and propagandist. And we'll read more of his stuff, more of his actual poetry at the end of the book. Okay, so this poster reads, «Лучших сосок не было и нет, готов сосать до старых лет». So it's kind of hard to translate this. It means something like, well, лучших сосок. There's our genitive plural. And then you see non-existence. Не было и нет. So these соска, and here we see in the genitive plural сосок. You can see in the poster, right, this baby kind of sucking on these various things. They're like rubber tips for old-fashioned baby bottles, right? And so that's what we're advertising here. And these are made by the rubber trust, right? The big Soviet rubber, I guess, monopoly, Резина Trieste. Okay, so anyway, he's saying не было и нет, right? There were not, or we could say there have not been, and there are not better rubber tips for pacifiers. Let's put it that way. Okay. Готов сосать до старых лет. I'm ready to suck until old years, if we read that literally. And so this phrase до старых лет just basically means until I'm old and gray, right? Until I'm an old man. I'm ready to suck my whole life, basically. Okay, so there's so much to unpack here that's ridiculous that I don't even know where to start, right? First of all, why would anyone be sucking on these until you're an old man? But anyway, first of all, note the rhyme, right? Лучших сосок не было и нет, готов сосать до старых лет. Right, so it's a little rhyming couplet. And then the other thing that makes this kind of somewhat off color is that this verb sasat, to suck, it has all the implications that the English verb to suck has. And so it just kind of sounds a little bit off kilter here or whatever. Okay, but anyway, that's a very famous poster. By the way, look at the other thing. It says here, продаются везде. Продаются везде, meaning these rubber pacifier tips are sold everywhere, right? They are sold passive. Продаются везде. Okay, so on that dubious note, that's it for today's lesson. So until next time, до свидания, товарищи. Вперед к новым победам.